Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kyla Hannington, and I'm the Public Outreach and Engagement Division Manager with the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights, the county's civil and human rights education and enforcement agency. With me tonight is my wonderful colleague, Tiana Davis, who's backstage right now, but we're going to bring her up in a few minutes. And she's also from the Office of Human Rights. And tonight, our office with our wonderful and long-standing event partners, the Prince George's County Memorial Library System, welcome you to Social Justice in the Arts. As workers in the human rights and social justice field, we think about and we see the ways that people engage in social justice work, in fighting for equity, in using their voices to create social change in their own lives. Some people write books, some people take to the streets, some people write songs, some people run for office, some people start organizations. And we're thrilled tonight to be joined by three people who are weaving social justice into the arts: Carol Zoe, Maribel Rodriguez, and Salomé Cosmique. Tonight's program showcases these artists who harness their creative talents to drive social change. Through their art, these individuals give voice to marginalized communities, challenge societal norms, and inspire action. So tonight, we're going to see some of their work. And the way it's going to work is we're going to hear from one of them and see what their presentation, and then we'll bring up the next, and then the next. And then when they're all done presenting, we will have a roundtable discussion. So first, we're going to hear from Carol, then Salomé, and then Maribel. We thank you so much for being with us tonight as we embark on this journey. So first, I'm going to bring up Carol. All right, Carol, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm going to take a minute and introduce you with your bio. Carol Zoe is a US-based community-engaged artist whose work engages themes of spatial justice, public pedagogy, and intercultural connection in multiracial neighborhoods. They engage durational process-based collaborations with community contributors using mediums of craft, media arts, and public installation. As a counterpoint to their collaborative work, their writing and conceptual works interrogate questions of conflict and antagonism constitutive to the public sphere. Their style of multi-sector collaboration gestures to an interdisciplinary, libertarian future in which we are all hopefully a little more undisciplined, which I love. Current and past affiliations include Yarn Bobbing Los Angeles, McLadia Think Tank, Translation, Vickery Meadow, Project Row Houses with the University of Houston, Asian Arts Initiative, American Monument, Imagining America, U.S. Department of Arts and Culture, SPA Embassy, Enterprise Community Partners with Little Tokyo Service Center, Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture, and The Hive. Carol, it is a pleasure to have you with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So I'm excited to share a little bit about my practice and what I'm thinking about in this current moment with you all. As you know, Kyla read from my bio, I am most known for my community engaged collaborations in multicultural neighborhoods that use art to address this issue of resident empowerment and organizing. And so this is an image from when I was artist in residence at Translation Vickery Meadow. And I worked with a local Baha'i group to amplify the message about journalists and Baha'is being imprisoned in Iran through the hashtag education is not a crime. So this was a mural that we created together with the Baha'i Junior Youth Group. Another example of my community engaged work is with Little Tokyo Service Center, an affordable housing development corporation in downtown Los Angeles in the historically Japanese neighborhood of Little Tokyo. So one of my projects is facilitating Little Tokyo neighbors and organizing creative events with affordable housing residents in order to build visibility, voice, and power of people who live in affordable housing in Los Angeles. And so on the right, we have an image of Hayashi-san, who is a fiber artist who lives in one of the affordable housing buildings, and she is hosting a fabric dyeing workshop during a summer pop-up event that we organized. But when it came to preparing for this conversation and talking about the theme of social justice in the arts, I also wanted to highlight what I call my B side, or my work that often doesn't get talked about as much as these community collaborations. And that is the fact that as an artist, I have developed my practice alongside national and global movements. And so one of my first experiences in the public sphere was actually with the Occupy movement in 2011. I was living and working in Los Angeles, and I met a group of artists, Owen Driggs, who were creating this gigantic 20-foot octopus puppet as a reference to historical drawings of octopi as representatives of corporate greed, because that was the theme of the Occupy movement, right? We are the 99% and critiquing the wealth of the 1%. And so that was a formative moment for me in terms of thinking about how artists can participate in social justice. And I collaborated in creating and puppeting this large 20-foot puppet, first on the steps of City Hall and then in the Rose Parade as a way to visibilize wealth inequality in the United States. Another politicizing moment for me was in 2015 with the killing of the teenager Mike Brown in Ferguson and the subsequent protests and the coining of the term Black Lives Matter. This is an installation created by my art collective at the time, Yarn Bombing Los Angeles, in which we used our Urban Letters project, a project that spelled out messages with yarn alphabet letters to reflect what was in the public discourse at that particular moment. And I would say that racial justice has been a core component of my work, ever since then, as well as prior. When I was living and working in Vickery Meadow, through translation, I was also collaborating with the with the activist collective Mothers Against Police Brutality. And we would create creative interventions in order to highlight police killings. And so this installation at the courthouse was created after the killing of 15-year-old Jordan Edwards right outside of Dallas, Texas. And it consists of a non-exhaustive list of people who have been killed by police, both locally and nationally, as an installation on the steps of the courthouse. This was followed by a collaboration with Mothers Against Police Brutality to host a community-based rally at a park downtown where one of the earliest incidences of police brutality in Dallas occurred. And that was when a 6-year-old boy named Santos Rodriguez was killed in that park. And so I worked with other artists, Goran Maric and Angela Faz, to basically rename the park. So we printed out an image and we posted it over the actual sign of the park to rename it to Santos Rodriguez Park to commemorate the police killing that occurred there. And even though I was not available for this particular event, I used skills from one of my collaborators and friends, Ramhan Cifuentes, a protest banner lending library, to create an End Police Brutality banner to be the backdrop of this march to end police brutality. And I want to bring these moments up because they're moments that are formative for me in my own artistic life. And I am very interested as a research thread in the ways that movements give rise to creative ways of agitating for social justice. And so I not only collaborate and produce creative interventions, but I also think about what it means to archive those interventions and to create a platform that recognizes the numerous other artists who are involved in this agitation for social change. And so that speaks a little bit to my role at the U.S. Department of Arts and Culture. I joined in 2019 to organize Artists Unite for a Green New Deal because that was also a very politically of the moment conversation, talking about what it would mean to have a widespread policy vision that related to climate justice. And so we hosted 3 online webinars, and we platformed both policy experts as well as artists who were looking at different aspects of what it meant to agitate for climate justice. And so that brings me to today in 2024. And what's been on my mind recently in terms of the relationship of artists to social justice and to national and global movements. And for almost a year, I have been thinking about and paying attention to artists who are allied in the struggle for a free Palestine. I'm sure we've seen the images on our news feeds, in the media. Just, a day ago, Israel bombed a refugee camp, leaving the size of a crater, right? Leaving an area the size of a crater with no human life remaining. And that bomb was created and sent by the United States. And so in terms of thinking about creatives and how we can link into the movement for global liberation, this is what has been on my mind. And so I want to bring up a couple examples of creative practices that I've really admired in the movement for a liberated Palestine. First is I want to acknowledge, Palestinians as creative, resilient survivors who are architects of their own liberation. And in this particular example, this is a group of people who are performing the dabka, a traditional dance, in front of Israeli snipers during the Great March of Return that was organized in 2018, in which Palestinians marched daily to the wall in the West Bank as a symbol of their resistance to occupation. And I think it's a wonderful way of fusing tradition and culture with also like resilience. So if we can play the link, maybe Kyla, if you can share the link in the chat, I definitely recommend checking out the video. And I also want to uplift another Palestinian cultural worker and scholar who was killed by the Israeli forces in last December. And before he died, he wrote a poem titled "If I Must Die," in which he implores us to create kites, right, to carry on his legacy and memory. And from that, from those words of poet and scholar Rifat Al-Arghir, people across the world have been flying kites as a gesture of solidarity. In terms of artists that are showing solidarity across the globe, I want to uplift the work of David Solnit, who is a longtime climate activist and movement artist who organizes several different types of interventions, but immediately in the days after October 7th, organized a street mural specifically calling for a ceasefire and outlining the United States' role in sending bombs and weapons to Israel. Another particularly moving cultural intervention is the residents of Guernica coming together in a public square and creating the image of the Palestinian flag in solidarity with Palestine. And this is significant because Guernica, as depicted in Picasso's famous painting, was bombed by fascist forces under Franco's dictatorship. And so their coming together is a gesture of solidarity and is a statement of people who have, experienced oppression, right? Experienced the violence of war, sending solidarity to people who are also currently experiencing extreme military violence. The last two images that I'll talk about that give me inspiration and provoke thought in this particular moment. These are bullhorn paintings that are painted by the artist and organizer Taz Ahmed. And she uses the image of the Palestinian kufiya, which is the Palestinian scarf, to adorn these bullhorns, thus combining a cultural image of resistance with an image or an actual object that we associate with direct action and resistance. And lastly, for all that are moved, I am very moved by the work of anti-Zionist Jewish artist Micah Bazant. And immediately in the days after October 7th, they organized an archive of pro-Palestinian artwork that continues to grow and is available for public use. And so people can access this archive, they can download the posters, they can post them in their homes, their schools, their offices, public space. And I think that this is an important way to keep the conversation going and keep this conversation alive. I'm an artist who has been shaped by the streets, who has been shaped by the creativity and agitation to others. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity to uplift what I've been thinking about and what others have been called to do in this particular moment. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carol. We are so glad you were with us. I just want to make sure I didn't prematurely end that, right?
Oh, that's great.
You're good? Okay, great. I really appreciate what you were sharing, and I was struck as you were talking and just about how much art changes lives, right? Like art fights back, and art also provides love. And I just think of those three areas as like such groundbreaking work and such incredible, like it just life-changing work. So thank you for sharing and for everything that you're doing. I'm going to bring Salomé up, and we'll bring you back at the end, and we'll have a little bit of a roundtable conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Sorry, it's a little fiddly bringing people up and down, so thank you for your patience, everybody at home. Salomé, thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to take a few minutes and just introduce your bio. So Salomé Cosmique is a Colombian artist, trauma-informed teaching artist, and curator currently living in San Juan, Puerto Rico. She has a degree in visual arts from the University of Strasbourg in France. And in 2002, while in France, she obtained her National Diploma of Plastic Arts with a concentration in sounds arts, from the School of Arts of the Rhine in Mulhouse, France. From 2017 to 2023, Salomé lived in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where she worked as a curator with Dissent Bodies, Dislocated International, and Love for Immigrants. And we're going to hear more from Love for Immigrants very soon. In Philadelphia, she exhibited in several individual and collective exhibitions. For Salomé, the arts form a positive vehicle which can bring beneficial changes to society, as well as the potential to transform lives. Art as a healer, something she promotes in her artistic pursuits. Since 2012, her performance work has been inspired by colonialism, immigration, women's inequality, and dissident bodies. Through her pictorial work, the artist seeks to remember the memories of our ancestors. She has exhibited in Europe, Latin America, the Caribbean, the United States, and India, and has been granted the micro grant of Bartol Foundation and Art and Change of Leeway Foundation. So Salomé, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this virtual event and to have the opportunity to share my art with everyone that are seeing this show. So I apologize myself. My English is my third language, so I will do my best, to try to explain what I'm doing in art. So basically, I'm an artivist, educator, curator, and a mother, immigrant mother. So today I'm going to talk about one of my main topics in my art project is immigration. In 2012, I have incident with immigration. Literally, I got married with a Puerto Rican that I met in France. And after my marriage, when I tried to get back to Puerto Rico, United States, the immigration stopped me and sent me back to Colombia for a year and a half. So I went to Colombia for my honeymoon, and then when I tried to come back to my home, I lost my home and my husband. So due to that experience, that was really the hardest experience in my life, I started doing my research in immigration, seeing how many people like me has faced the same kind of experience. These installations that I did in Bogota while I was waiting for my residence, for my American residence, I I have a baby of 2 years old, so you can hear him now. So I do this installation. The name is American is Wonderland in 2040, where I share all my story, all the paperwork that the immigration asks me, all the questions that they ask me the same question during 8 hours in a small room. Why I get married with American citizen? Why was you proposed to get married with American citizen? So they believe that my marriage was fake. So thanks to these exhibitions, I heal myself because I understand when you share your story, you heal because it's part of you that you relive. And I start being connected with a lot of immigrants, and I start doing my research about all the different cases that they have, all the different people that they have to be the same story, that have the same story that I had. So in this installation, I show a video about the train of death. The train of death is, hold on, the train of death is a train that the immigrant has to take through travel to Mexico to get to the U.S. border. And many people are killed, many women especially are raped. So this is the main topic of the installation. The other one,
I just popped on to say that we love babies, and I might want to say hello to the baby.
his
So,
name is
hey,
Sebastian.
and I don't want you to worry. We really are so grateful when young people come and grace our show, but also our lives. So as you go forward today, just remember we're very happy, and I know that's true for our viewers too.
Okay, so the next slide is about another exhibit that I did in. That one is my passport. My visa was canceled because I was inadmissible from getting to United States because I didn't have the right visa. So I printed in a big size, and I just cut my face. So the public has the experience to be part of my experience in the exhibitions, the art installation American is Wonderland. The next one, that one is after a year and a half. I finally get my papers, my residence, so I can move back to Aguadilla, Puerto Rico, and to be with my husband after our marriage. So I did these installations in the University of Puerto Rico in Aguadilla campus. That is the same. It's about the different people that has passed away during their journey to get to the United States, especially when a lot of people die in the desert, because there are a lot of people that they shoot them, or the coyotes that are the people that the people have to pay in order to bring them to United States. No, mi amor, estás haciendo algo. Hold on. Sorry.
We love babies. We love babies. It's all good. All right.
Yeah, I know, but sometimes it's difficult because they interrupt me. So never mind. So in that exhibit, I show some cases, real cases that the people has passed away. So it was an kind of ritual. You can pass the other slide, please. Yeah, this is the installations. So the people, when they get inside, they can see the televisions. The television was the same. It was a video about the train of death and all the immigrant experience that they have to face during the journey. And a lot of people have died. So I share those stories too, because I'm very interested in share stories, because when we share stories, you heal yourself. And sometimes as an immigrant, because I've been immigrant since 2008 in France, in Puerto Rico, and in the United States, no one asks you about why you are coming to United States or why you leave your hometown. So that is very important, because it's sometimes that sometimes you just hide because you are lost in translations, or you have to learn how to navigate in the new systems. So for me, it's important to share stories, because in order, when you share, we heal together, because we feel empathy, and sometimes we believe that something happened to me and it's just to me, and a lot of people have faced the same thing. So you relieve your pain a little bit. So the next one is, it was a case that touched me. It's Sergio Adrián Hernandez. He was a Mexican, and he died when some agent killed him, because he tried to, they assumed that he has drugs, and he tried to just running away. So it was a case that I find in the newspaper and through an organizations in the border from Curita, el padre Juan Luis Amado. He has like house that he helped all the immigrants that they are trying to get to United States. So I honor this victim in the exhibit, in the installation that I did in Puerto Rico University of Aguadilla campus. The next slide, that one is in also in Puerto Rico. It was an installation and one of my first performance shows. I still working with the televisions, because sometimes when you see the news in your house, it's different when you see something in an art, gallery. The people there is looking with attention in a different way, and this is my way to try to make awareness and to try to create a social change, and to try to try to say to the people that all the immigrants are important, even though if they don't have papers. They are just human beings that they try to get to North America to get a better life, or they just try to flee from the poverty because they came from a very difficult country that has very difficult economy. So they assume that in North America they have a better life. So the next slide is, during the show, I honor also the victims, the many people that pass away in the desert. So I hold 10 stick with a name of a person, and I invited the people to do a cross in order them that they pass away in their journey. And the public, were part of the performance, and it was around 2 hours and a half, where I hold all the, the bodies on my arm, and the public do, a ritual to honor their death. Sorry. The next one, that one is beautiful. I did it when I moved to Philadelphia. When I arrived to Philadelphia, I find a job as a translator, and I work in the school district of Philadelphia to help all the children to has crossed the border during the government of Donald Trump. So they were separate from their family. So when they get to the school, they were lost in translation. So I I help them to translate, to do the translation in the school. So I start playing with them, and I start ask them how they get to the United States, and uh, I I I heard a beautiful stories when the mother start crying, tell me how was their journey. Some story were very, like a funny, and the other one was really tough. So this performance was in the Benjamin Bridge in Philadelphia, that you can cross to Philadelphia to Camden, New Jersey. So I did that performance with a colleague, Colombian colleague, Adrian Huesos. So I hold a bunch of balloons. The balloons were, our meaning of the balloon was the innocence of the children, that they lost the innocence during their stay in the detention center without their families. So we did an hour and a half project that take you to pass the bridge, and I was holding the balloons, and Adrian took one by one balloon and put a rock. So the meaning of the rock is that they just lost their innocence. They just, get down to the land, and they have to face something terrible without their decisions, because normally the children doesn't take the decisions to go to United States. It's their parent who just brought them, because you can leave your baby. You just try to find a different way to live. I don't know if I'm talking too much, but I will try. I think
You're doing great. You're doing great.
This is the photos. The police tried to pass to stop us, but we were very pacific, and we were there with a journalist. So the journalists kind of protect us, because he record everything. So because sometimes you are not allowed to do that in a bridge, no. So the police, you can see the police that passed just next by us, but they didn't stop us, and I could finish the performance. That is the end of the performance. At the end of the bridge, we just put a balloon for all those children that they lost their family. There are many children that in the detention center that they cannot find their families. That one is a project that is not about me. It's the opportunity to give them to the community, especially to the children, to tell their stories, that how they came to United States. Many of them are, like the immigrant second generation. That's mean that they were born in the United States, but they told us their story through art. So I got a grant from Leeway Foundation. So I did this beautiful project that was a free workshop for the community of South Philadelphia, where through art they tell how they arrived to United States. That is all the children, telling us how their mother came to United States. It was very meaningful work for me, because it was the opportunity to share their stories, that sometimes when you are immigrant, and especially if you have, the illegal behind you because you feel like you are not human being. You are illegal. You don't have paper. You are scared. They have opportunity to tell their stories. In the beginning, a lot of people were really shy, but I start telling my story because I faced the same thing in a different way because I have a visa and I was stopped and they treat me very horrible, but in a different way. That one in the detention center is terrible. They just pull them in a cold room and they are freezing them and they ask them the same question every hour. Why you are coming here? Why are you going here? And you have, they try to find if you are lying, but it's not just for babies, children don't have to live that. So that is the last slide. The other one that, thanks to the performance show that I did in the Benjamin Franklin Bridge, Maribel from Love for Immigrant reached me to invite me to be part of Love for Immigrants. So since 2019, I'm part of the beautiful Love for Immigrant movement, we can say movement community. So this is a video of an exhibition that I curate with Maribel and Love for Immigrants. So I leave you that, and then Maribel will explain you more about Love for Immigrants in DC. Thank you so much, and I hope so that you can understand me, and you can follow me through my social media, Salomé Cosmique, and I'm still working in immigrations. If you can tell me your story, you're very welcome. Thanks.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. I do want to share a couple comments that came in while you were talking. I want to let people know I did share the video that was at your end of the presentation. I put the link to that in the chat, so afterwards people will be able to go and find that. But one of our viewers said, thank you for sharing your experience with immigration. The story is powerful and necessary for others to hear. And then 3 hearts to the young one. So from one of our viewers. And then another viewer said, I first want to say, I love your artistic expression. Art is healing. And I use art therapy with my students. And I'll definitely share your artistic expressions with them. So I just wanted you to hear some of the comments that came in while you were sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to take you off the screen. I do realize, and I will just say this for the viewers as well, there is a chance Salomé may not be able to stay with us, but hopefully she'll be here. We're able to bring her back at the end. But if not, I'm going to thank you now so much for your time. It's been wonderful. So wonderful having you. And we're just going to make a little transition and bring up Maribel.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Maribel. Thank you so much for being with us.
With a lot of joy. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're doing great. And I'm just going to read your bio, which is way over here on the screen. So I keep looking away. I'm so sorry for that. But just give me what I'll introduce. I want to introduce you to everybody. I'm very fortunate. I've known Maribel now for a few years. And actually, Maribel, this is not your first time being with us as a guest here. So thank you for coming back and being with us. Maribel Rodriguez loves her roots and her parents' countries, Colombia and Puerto Rico. Having been to both countries and growing up in Brooklyn, New York, a melting pot of many cultures, she has a love for people of diverse cultures and walks of life. She studied photography at the Rochester Institute of Technology. I'm saying because I think I dropped a word from your bio. I'm so sorry. And social enterprise at American University. Please feel free to correct the record when I'm done talking. This is where Love for Immigrants at the social enterprise at American University. This is where Love for Immigrants was founded as a graduate capstone project out of the frustration of seeing immigrants being depicted in the media in untruthful and inhumane ways. In addition to creating Love for Immigrants, she is an educator with Learn Serve International. Maribel, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And just a quick update for everyone. I work at the library now, Prince George's County Library as the Intercultural Services Coordinator. And I'm very glad to be in that role. And although I stopped teaching social entrepreneurship a little while back, I still keep a close touch with the social justice camp at the library. And so I'm really excited to tell you all about this project that came about from that graduate studies in the School of International Service, but really from a deeper root of just really love for a variety of cultures, a deep respect and honor for my parents' cultures and my own, and hoping and wishing that other people had that same privilege to really see different walks of life and be able to have that humanistic view and connect humanly with people. So in the previous conversations, I talked about how we got started, and our first exhibit, which really was around mental health and healing. And this presentation, I really want to discuss how we've managed to use art as a tool for social change. And it's not always simple because some of our artists, or groups that we've collaborated with have said before, like, we are artists first, but we are lucky to also have a lot of artist activists in our community as well, and making this work possible. And so you know who we are. We're a social space for immigrant support. We aim to connect immigrants to their communities as respected, loved, and heard individuals by sharing their narratives through art and storytelling. And what that means usually is one art exhibit per year, whether it's virtual or in person. And so you can go to the other slide, and I'll tell you more. Oh, so here you actually see Salomé, who just spoke, who is our current curator and has been a curator for a couple of years now. And she started as an artist, and said, I want to do more, and has really helped us in moving towards our massive transformative purpose of creating and connecting people to their humanity and those of others through dignified narratives for a more loving, creative, and compassionate world. Next slide, please. So how we were able to connect artistic expression to advocacy really is summed up in this year's theme that we chose for our exhibition, named Artivists Building Bridges. And this was hosted at Bluebird Sky Yoga. So thanks to this opportunity, we really were able to have artists reflect on their activism through their artwork and tell us their stories. Sometimes their story alone and their identity is, in a way, a revolution enough, especially those who connect healing themselves and self acceptance. And other times they do bring up very specific human rights issues in their work to create awareness. So it really depends on from artist to artist, and I'll go more into detail. But here you can see our community members enjoying the stories. We had one art talk and one poet, which I will further highlight in the next slides. So where we really sort of flourish in this work is providing a community and a platform for our artists who already have a voice, and they're looking for places to share their stories, to share their concepts and their beautiful artwork. Because I know some people say, voice for the voiceless. I don't think that's the case for us. I think most of our community members have a very deep and profound voice, and they just want to be amplified. And we're one of many communities that they tend to be a part of. And so we're very lucky to have them. In a way, they help us more probably than we help them, but definitely towards the idea and movement of creating more acceptance and love and healing in our society, so we could all look at each other as brothers and sisters at the end of the day, right? That's what we're here for. And so I want to introduce you to one of our artists who actually we had the chance to listen to her story in person. Her name is Ana Yelsi Velasco Sanchez. And in this artwork, I am beautiful outside the white gaze. It's really just that. It's this idea of a profound realization that the artist was beautiful and didn't quite always feel beautiful, mainly because of the spaces she was inhabiting at the time, and moving towards more diverse spaces. She realized just how beautiful she could see herself based on who was around her and who was really looking. So I think this is an invitation to all of us to really see ourselves, see our self-worth, accept ourselves and our beauty, and start that inner healing. But outside of that, Ana Yelsi is not only an artist, although that is really wonderful and great and a way she connected with our community, but also an activist and a consultant. And I had the opportunity to really learn about how art was a way of really trying to process the difficulties in pursuing activism and in the daily life of activism, because you might already hear activists talking about burning out or their mental health or just how really the work can take a toll. And so art was a way to really create a space for that self-care as they pursued continued efforts in their movements. So one of the things that they focus on is liberating justice through creative endeavors. So I think this says it all. And one other point here is they not only focus on that mental health piece, but really on just profoundly thinking about their identity as they navigate their artistic life and their activist life. And last but not least, Ana Yelsi represents Venezuela, which is where they were born, and they were raised in the United States. So there's also this need in our community, and why we probably resonate or connect with one another is that some art spaces may not always be accepting or as inclusive, or maybe there is a level of superiority or whatever it may be. And in our community, we really accept all parts of their identity that intersect, especially that piece of them being immigrants or being children of immigrants or being somewhere in the middle. And that sometimes is neglected, not always discussed. And so we offer that. I think that's where we offer the most. And that in itself can be, in a way, a small, I would say, grain of sand of pursuing a social goal. So next slide, please. So here I want to look at Amir's work with you a little bit. And right off the bat, you already can have an idea of where we're going with and what the artist wanted to say. But I will first introduce Amira, who's a multimedia artist and is inspired typically by their culture, nature, and poetry. But other times they're inspired by current events and the issues that they see in the world around them. Like some of the other artists you'll see here. They are Egyptian American, and one extra sort of like cherry on top way that this artist really pursues social justice is by donating part of the proceeds from their art sales to different causes that they care about. So I know at least of a couple artists who do that, and that's just an amazing thing. After having a very profound concept behind their work, they also think about what putting really their money where their mind is, and that's not always easy when you don't quite it's not always easy to make money from your art. So to donate it is quite a big step. Here in this work, and why I chose it, it's called Lost Childhood. It's called Lost Childhood, and although here really you're seeing a Palestinian child, I think this art piece also talks about childhood as a whole in relationship to war. And I'll read a quote from Amira. So the child, she, represents the children whose childhood is robbed, but hold on to their homeland. And in many cases, when there's war, you see numbers, you see statistics, but we forget that we are talking about children and their families. And we're talking about how displacement starts, right? Sometimes it's really hard to see why migration happens in the first place, and one of the factors, not the only factor, is war. And so here is a really great example of an artist using their work and their voice to, in a way, say they're anti-war and they're pro-peace. And it's not the only time that we've seen that. I think in the past, you've probably noticed or really have heard of, I would say mainly in the Vietnam War, how artists really played a role in galvanizing society to do something about the issues that they saw. And you can think of different singers like Nina Simone, Marvin Gaye, John Lennon, or you can think of some of the photographers. And in my early education with history, I would say some of the photographs of the Vietnam War is what introduced me to photography and made me want to pursue a degree in photography. And for society at that time, it really put an image in their minds about what they were hearing from this war, and really jumped them into action, which, as you know, apathy can really be a barrier to movements. But in this case, art was that, I guess, that medicine for people to really wake up and do something about it, about the war. But it's not the first time, and it won't be the last. Artists are usually behind some of our movements in ways that we don't always acknowledge when we talk about important and notable figures. So can you go to the next slide, please? And now I want to talk about Kin. Kin is one of our artists who is a poet and a technologist as well, and focused really on the human rights issues. She is originally from Myanmar, also known as Burma, and based in the DC area at the moment. What's really interesting, and I would say captivating, about this story behind the work is that if you see, there's dried flowers in the middle of the art piece. These dried flowers represent the salute, the symbol of the resistance back in their home in Myanmar, which is a salute to um, a signal to the military coup that undemocratically took power in 2021, and to resist that in a way that just terrible instance where people lost their voice, and they were persecuted for being part of the resistance. um, and during their time trying to move from one location to the other, Kin was able to keep this art piece safe, and then it ended up being displayed in areas like Washington D.C., like our exhibit. And so, one, I was very, very shocked to hear that, because if I were persecuted or trying to find a safer place for my resistance, I would probably forget about my art and just say, I'll make another piece and I have to go. But they were very, very close to that art piece and what it signified. And so I'll read a quote from them, and it's Kin saying, "I turn to art, to painting, to grieve and to express hope in our resistance." And I hope that this also provides hope for those of you who are starting your journey in activism or in social justice in any way, whether it's education or music or art, or going out in the streets and protesting. And that's what they offer. And one of the things I would say that really ties this movement to others is looking at pro-democracy movements around the world. Usually you may see it in the typical way of like people out in the streets, or stopping traffic, or just really trying to sign petitions. But in this case, art can also be one of the ways to signal and to commemorate that resistance. The next slide, please. So here we have Yelis, who is an artist, but also a biologist. And you kind of see the theme, as some of our artists work full-time in some ways to support their craft. And they also have mixed media in their work, typically. And usually their focus is on self-discovery and self-expression, typically advocating for gender equality and for amplifying the voices of women. So what you might see in many of the art pieces is emotions that are expressed by self-portraits. And in this case, this art piece is called Who I Am. Really invites the viewer to think about the mask that you are wearing, and if and when you can let that barrier down and take that mask off to really be more of your authentic self. And I think in a world where we're sort of told that we're not enough, that we need to be someone else, it can be pretty revolutionary, at least on the internal world, to think about who you are authentically if you didn't feel the pressure to be someone else. But I would say there's other work here that I couldn't show at all that really looks at this idea of self-love, loving who you are in all aspects of it. And I wish I could show that one as well, but it's I think it's displayed beautifully here as well. And you might think about past movements like the suffragists, who really helped us think about or get our rights for voting. Or you might look at different national organizations, or even um, writers like Betty Friedman, who wrote The Feminine Mystique. And this is just a continuation of what came before us, of people who have been behind social movements. But writing is one way, and here in this case, visual arts is another way to really show the woman empowerment. And it has different layers as generations, from generation to generation, it may look different. The next slide, please. Senia is a artist who typically focuses on figurative art, and here you can see usually it's very realistic, and it would look like a portrait of someone. And they explore the unexpressed feelings and really take inspiration from where they grew up in Russia and Serbia, um, in a very industrial place. So their work usually has a melancholic feel, a feeling of nostalgia. And this piece is called We Disappear. And I'll read this quote from Xenia. It is hard to establish a connection when you don't live in your own country. So going back to Love for Immigrants, and what we serve is that piece for our artists to feel like they can come as themselves into our space completely, with even the part of themselves that's not, that they feel like they may have to assimilate, that's not necessary in our space. And also, what connection you think this may have to social movements, I would say, is that unexpressed feelings in all of us typically lead to a lot of sadness or a lot of difficult feelings that can sort of stop us from taking any steps or any movement in any direction. And the beginning of when you start to heal that piece or to express these feelings, that can then transform into taking action and being a catalyst for change for any cause that you may care about. And so really in this case, it's also an invitation for the viewer to really think about those feelings that are unexpressed. And in society, when feelings are expressed, especially anger, it is rooted usually in social issue or a community's pain from suffering a major injustice. And when ignored, you really can't move society forward in the right direction. But if you acknowledge that there's something serious going on and that your feelings aren't um, just, instead of dismissing it, really looking into it and thinking about what you can do. And so that's, I think, the piece that they can share here. And I know we're kind of at time, so I want to just stop here. And there's so much more that I can share, but I would say through our artists is how we attempt to connect with social justice and to be that that inspiration for others. Thank you.
Maribel, thank you so much. I know that you had to cut it short, but it was what we got to see from you was wonderful. I'm going to bring Tiana up. Unfortunately, Salome did have to go, but we're going to just have a brief conversation for a few minutes before we close. So I hope people can stay with us. We know we're a little bit at time. I do want to share. So first of all, we love the conversation so much. I do want to just highlight a question from the audience here. Denise is wondering if any of the art pieces are available. So I don't know if either one of you want to answer that or. You're both muted.
I'm happy to go first. So many of the art pieces are available. I would say, to my knowledge, there's only one that's already sold, and that's Kin's artwork. But if you are looking towards supporting one of our artists, please feel free to email me or just let me know. And I'm happy to make that connection for you with the artist.
Awesome. I put a link earlier for Love for Immigrants that you can go to. You can go to the website loveforimmigrants.org. You can also email Love for Immigrants. The email address is love4, like the numeral 4, immigrants@gmail.com, which I think is also, you can find a contact thing on the website. And I know there's a couple more comments from the audience I want to share, but I know Tiana has a question, so I want to give her time to ask a question, and then we'll get a couple audience comments and then we'll head out.
Yeah, my question is about protecting your peace. Working in social justice can be emotionally and mentally draining. Even, I assume if you're on the more artistic side of things. So what do you guys do to protect your peace in this work?
I feel like I'm like, what don't I do? I think my entire life is actually built around protecting my peace. I think something that was very important to me when working in Vickery Meadow, which I neglected to mention, was made up of partially resettled refugees. That was the community. Was I ended up experiencing caregiver fatigue and secondary trauma or vicarious trauma because, like Maribel mentioned, people go through hell to come to before they come to the United States, and starting over is still very difficult for people. And so I think having a very solid foundation on what it means to be trauma informed, and having a very solid foundation of the type of caregiver fatigue or secondary trauma that can happen in these positions is the first step to, I would say, rigorously protecting your peace.
I would say, in very short, I go dancing when I can, and that tends to really help. But to elaborate a little further with that question, there is some burnout when there's a lot of work, especially when my Love for Immigrants work takes place after my full-time job. But I do have a pretty active social life, and I have good friends, and my family's okay. So I do feel supported in that way, and I'm lucky and privileged in that way. But when I remember that I'm not the only one in this space doing this type of work, that tends to help. And to know that doing something instead of nothing at all is a type of peace, because doing nothing can also be extremely just anxiety producing. And in a way, it's a step in the right direction for creating the world that we want to live in. So that idea gives me peace. Thank you.
Thank you both actually so much for being here. We are past time. Actually, we've held you for about as long as we can. So thank you, Carol and Maribel and Salome, who had to leave, for being with us, and thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for your commitment to social justice, and thank you to our audience. We have a great audience who comes to all of our live videos, and we appreciate it. They keep things engaging. They participate in the chat, and we really appreciate it. So please join us for our next one. We're bringing back Lunch and Learn on Tuesday at noon. We're going to be speaking with Ira Shinoy about predicting the winner, which is very timely ahead of this next election. And then later that same day, we have our Solidarity Stories book group at Mixed Food Hall. We will be discussing Family Lore by Elizabeth Acevedo. Thank you, Kyla. So we hope to see you guys soon. Thank you again, Carol and Maribel, and good night, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. And if I may be a librarian, try to visit Oxon Hill September 21 for the Festival of Cultures.